This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today on NewsWatch, the aftermath of Hurricane Michael, one of the strongest to hit the American coastline in recorded memory. We're going to show you how devastating it was in Florida and what is being done to help those who are just beginning the recovery process. Plus, could freedom finally be in sight for American evangelical pastor Andrew Brunson, who's been imprisoned in Turkey for 2 years? And the new movie that shows you the story you won't hear in major media about abortionist Gosnell, who has been called the biggest serial killer in American history. Those stories and so much more are ahead today on CBN NewsWatch. We begin now with the aftermath of Hurricane Michael and the devastation it left behind. After the monster Michael passed through Florida, video drones took to the skies over Panama City, revealing the extent of the damage. One example, Mexico Beach, once a pristine and popular destination, now wiped out as if a bomb went off. Michael came ashore 20 miles southeast of Panama City with winds of 155 miles an hour and a storm surge catastrophic sea waves of 13 feet. By this morning, at least 7 people were dead and entire neighborhoods and beaches disappeared.
So many lives have been changed forever. So many families have lost everything. Homes are gone. Businesses are gone.
Downgraded to a tropical storm, Michael moved quickly through Georgia, the Carolinas, Virginia, and then out to sea. Floodwaters surged through the Carolinas, already drenched by Hurricane Florence. Downed trees and gale force winds knocked out power to 900,000 homes and businesses. Our reporter Gary Lane is covering this story for us today. He's here now with more. So Gary, some of those images, especially from Panama City, are unbelievable. What have you learned about what happened there?
Well, the devastation is just, as you said, unbelievable, catastrophic. Some people are saying it's like an apocalypse, like a gigantic bomb went off. But what we've learned is some people who stayed behind, now many people were supposed to evacuate, Absolutely. But you know, there's always someone who stays behind. People who stayed behind said they saw entire houses just blown away. I mean, the force that went, I can't imagine that. But then you have the storm surge, 13 feet the waves were.
Unbelievable. Now, it didn't just hit Florida's panhandle, of course. This storm also caused a lot of heartache and hardship elsewhere.
Yes.
What's happening now?
Well, elsewhere, as it moved up through Georgia and into the Carolinas, of course, the Carolinas were already devastated a couple of weeks ago by Florence, as you remember correctly. We reported that, floodwaters everywhere, and they haven't even recovered from that. Now more rain, more wind. In Virginia, in the western part of Virginia, also similar situations with floodwaters. People were in their cars. One woman said she barely got out alive. She was, all of a sudden, water rushed by and she couldn't get out.
Unbelievable. Any update in terms of the storm now? What's happening?
Well, what's happening now, it's off into the Atlantic. But believe it or not, there is still a rescue effort going on in Florida because some people may still be trapped in their homes.
Oh, so sad to hear. Thank you, Gary, for that.
And that'll happen before the recovery.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. CBN's Operation Blessing is moving into the disaster area. Workers at Operation Blessing staging centers are loading up bottled water, food, and other relief items. Meanwhile, a mobile kitchen, support trucks, and a construction trailer are on the road. Right now, Operation Blessing team is involved in more movements across more states than nearly any other time in history. Operation Blessing is also connecting with area pastors to set up volunteer and distribution centers. Operation Blessing's Tom Wiley met with one pastor in Panama City Beach who said the promise of help can't come too soon.
It was devastation. It felt like you'd walked into a war zone.
For Pastor Ben Pittman of First Assemblies of God Church in Panama City, Florida, it's been a devastating reality for him and his neighbors after witnessing the havoc of Hurricane Michael.
I think for the majority of the people here in Panama City, they weren't ready for this storm to be what it was. I don't even know the damage to the people of this city yet. I don't know if there's been loss of life. I don't know what family damages look like. I know people will have just lost a lot of jobs.
Panama City, along with many of these coastal regions, have been hit so hard, it's literally going to be a multi-year rebuilding effort. It's going to be a long-term recovery that's going to really require a lot of support from outside agencies like Operation Blessing. Pastor Ben believes this is a time for the church to come together.
Conflict and struggle doesn't create in us who we become. It exposes who we are. And so as a pastor, I'm looking at my people because that's the church. And I'm about to find out what kind of people we have as a church. Now is where the rubber meets the road for me. What kind of people do we have in our church? And from what I've seen already, it's pretty phenomenal. And it's strange, it's a little bit crazy to think that even in something like this, that we would see God move. When I find out that Operation Blessing is here to serve us, the initial reaction that I have is we are not worthy to keep this blessing for ourselves. This had better go to the whole city. Like when I hear of an organisation coming in like Operation Blessing, I have to give it away. It has to go bigger than Panama City First Assembly.
And you can help make that happen. You can learn more about what Operation Blessing is doing by visiting its website, that is ob.org. Want to turn overseas right now. After 2 years of prison and detention, American pastor Andrew Brunson faced another court hearing in Turkey today, with the possibility he may finally be released. As Chris Mitchell reports now from Jerusalem, Brunson's arrest has brought two NATO allies, the United States and Turkey, face to face in a confrontation over the fate and future of this evangelical minister.
Pastor Brunson's ordeal has mobilized Christians around the world.
Hundreds of thousands of people have been praying for Pastor Brunson, not just in the United States, but around the world.
Before the court hearing, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence said the release of Pastor Brunson has been a priority for the Trump administration.
Our administration has made very clear that we will continue to stand strong until Pastor Andrew Brunson is free and back home in the United States with his family and with his church.
This is historic in that how many times they have actually brought this subject up in high-level conversations with the Turkish administration.
Turkey accused Brunson of participating in a 2016 coup to overthrow the government of Turkish President Erdogan and faces up to 35 years if convicted. His latest trial took place near the city of Izmir, known as ancient Smyrna in the New Testament. Brunson ministered for more than 2 decades in his church and denied the charges. The Trump administration imposed economic sanctions against Turkey to secure his release. Middle East analyst Michael Karam said Pastor Brunson stood for more than his own freedom.
I believe this is really a call to prayer, not only for Andrew, but for the Turkish and Kurdish and Arab and Syrian and Iraqi and Iranian people, all living very much close, because it's clear that Andrew Brunson is in prison or under arrest for one reason, and that's his hope and faith in Jesus Christ as the Messiah, not only of the West, but of the entire world.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
It's been 2 weeks since the killer quake and tsunami struck central Sulawesi in Indonesia. Tremors are still being felt by the people there, and that is why most still live in tents, fearful that it will happen again. Despite having to deal with aftershocks, our CBN and Operation Blessing international teams are there continuously giving aid and hope to survivors. Lucille Talusan brings us that story from Indonesia.
Furman shouted, "Jesus help, Jesus help," while recording this video of mud swallowing up his village.
It's a miracle I managed to come out of it alive.
While there were miracle stories of surviving the earthquake and tsunami, there were thousands who did not make it. One of the many tragic stories includes Fatna. Her husband died during the earthquake when the building where he worked collapsed on him.
Now that he's dead, I don't know where to turn to.
Fatna is only one among tens of thousands affected by the earthquake and tsunami. Many lost loved ones, homes, and now live uncomfortably in makeshift tents. According to community leader Abdul Latif, food and clean water are desperately needed in these refugee camps. Today, an Operation Blessing team came to Fatna's village to teach them how to purify water.
Different kind of treatments of water, not only chlorine. We also have some little filtration systems, and also we have these aqua tabs that they can put it on the water and they can disinfect the water with that too. We're trying to do our best to support them in this hard time.
It will take several months before the city can recover, and this is why Operation Blessing will continue with its rehabilitation programs to help survivors get back to their normal lives. Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Palu, Indonesia.
Coming up, the mysterious disappearance and quite possibly murder of a Saudi Arabian journalist. what the Saudi government behind it? That's what people want to know. Now both political parties here in the U.S. are telling the Saudis they want answers. We're going to have that story coming up right after this. A delegation from Saudi Arabia arrived in Turkey today as part of an investigation into the disappearance of a Saudi dissident journalist. Jamal Khashoggi vanished last week after entering the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Some Turkish officials believe he may have been murdered inside the consulate, but they haven't offered any evidence. And Saudi Arabia calls that allegation, quote, baseless. But many believe that Khashoggi, a contributor to the Washington Post, may indeed have been killed. Dale Hurd is on this story.
Video shows Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi walking into the Saudi Arabian consulate in Istanbul more than a week ago. There's no video of him ever coming out. But there are images and video of an alleged 15-member Saudi assassination squad entering the country by private plane. And surveillance video that shows that 2 hours after Khashoggi walked into the consulate, a van with diplomatic license plates left with someone or something inside. News reports suggest Khashoggi, a writer for the Washington Post and a frequent critic of the Saudi government, was tortured, killed, and his body dismembered. Khashoggi had gone into the consulate to get a document to allow him to remarry while his fiancée waited outside. Saudi Arabia dismisses the allegation of murder as baseless. However, the kingdom has offered no evidence that the writer did indeed leave the consulate and is still alive.
It's a very sad situation. It's a very bad situation, and we want to get to the bottom of it.
President Trump says the U.S. is demanding answers from Saudi Arabia, and he plans to invite Khashoggi's fiancée to the White House.
His wife wrote us a letter and addressed it to my wife and myself, and we're in contact with her now, and we want to bring her to the White House.
The reaction among U.S. senators from both parties to the reports of Khashoggi's disappearance has been shock and anger. Senator Lindsey Graham says if the Saudis did murder Khashoggi, there will be, quote, hell to pay.
Well, we're going to get to the bottom of it, and I hope there's a good explanation. If not, this will be a game changer for me regarding the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
If Saudi Arabia took a U.S. resident, lured him into a consulate and killed him, it's time for the United States to rethink our military, political, and economic relationship with Saudi Arabia.
The incident calls into question whether the heir apparent to the Saudi throne, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, is the pro-democracy reformer he claimed he was.
To go back to what we were, the moderate Islam that is open to the world, open to all the religions.
Khashoggi's democratic credentials have also come under attack. He was an open supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, but as a fierce critic of the Saudi regime, he reportedly told friends a few months ago he had reason to fear for his life. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Still ahead, he's been called America's biggest serial killer, and he was an abortionist. Now the true story of Kermit Gosnell comes to the big screen today in the new movie Gosnell. We'll have that story when we come back. The long-awaited story of Philadelphia abortionist Kermit Gosnell hits theaters today. The movie follows the investigation, trial, and conviction of the man dubbed America's biggest serial killer. As Charlene Aaron shows us, film producers face many obstacles in bringing this story to the big screen.
This groundbreaking movie highlights a true-life horror story that went almost ignored by politicians and the mainstream media. CBN News, however, followed the story from the crime scene to the courthouse.
You'd think a case about a medical doctor killing babies born alive would be a big news story, but what was also shocking about the trial of Kermit Gosnell was how little media attention it received. I was in the courtroom for CBN News covering the trial, just one of a handful of journalists in that courtroom.
You are not going to believe what I saw last night.
Starring Dean Cain as a detective, the PG-13 film explores the shocking crimes and trial of Kermit Gosnell, who received a life sentence for killing thousands of babies over 3 decades. The jury found Gosnell guilty of murdering 3 babies born alive. Producers Phelan McAleer and Ann McElhenney told CBN News of their uphill battle in making the film, which began with trying to raise money through the site Kickstarter.
We tell them our whole campaign, and suddenly they're basically censoring us. They said, oh, you can't mention
babies murdered. You can't mention babies stabbed to death. They didn't want to have anything to do with us.
The filmmakers also faced backlash from other sources. They blamed Planned Parenthood for a recently canceled screening of the film. Plus, numerous media outlets rejected ads for the movie.
We had NPR refusing to run our ads, refusing to run the ads. They wouldn't allow us to call Kermit Gosnell an abortion doctor. Facebook have rejected ad upon ad upon ad that we have put up.
Meanwhile, McElhinney points out similarities between the left's lack of outrage in the Gosnell case and Democrats' treatment of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, saying it just goes to show how far they will go to protect abortion.
I see a huge parallel here between what has happened to us and what happened to him. I don't know what that man would have had to do to prove himself worthy to the Democrats. It's not about anything but about abortion. This is all about abortion.
Gosnell, the trial of America's biggest serial killer, opens in theaters today. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Still ahead, a look at another major film opening this weekend about the historic first landing on the moon in 1969. It's called First Man, and we'll have a review of this new film when we come back. American astronaut Neil Armstrong made history in 1969 when he became the first man to set foot on the moon. Now the story of that amazing accomplishment is the subject of a major new film coming out today. It is called First Man. Here's a review of the new movie from Focus on the Family.
First Man tells the story behind the first U.S. trip to the moon. And of course, the iconic astronaut at its center, Neil Armstrong.
First man to walk on the moon. That'd be something.
But this isn't a pic that simply lauds achievements and heroes. It's a movie that shares the hard parts.
This isn't just another trip, Neil. You're not just going to work.
Do you think you're coming back?
It depicts Armstrong as a real person, a somewhat charisma-free guy who's emotionally detached and both haunted and motivated by the cancer death of his young daughter. The movie also introduces us to Armstrong's iron-willed wife, Janet.
You don't have anything under control.
And all the other men and women required to hammer 1961's almost laughably fragile technology into something that can make its way to the moon some 240,000 miles away.
Here we go. 6, 5.
This is a film about fear, determination, and daring. It's about people stepping into the unknown and reaching a goal that many thought was impossible. This film is involving and moving. It does indeed talk of the grit and sacrifice needed for a nearly impossible feat, and it lauds the sacrifices made by astronauts' families as well. On the other hand, though, we are shown fiery deaths and the violence and peril of spaceflight. And the harsh language will, at times, launch this film outside a viewing family's comfort range. With that in mind, I'll give First Man a 2.5 out of 5 for family friendliness. For the full review, be sure to visit PluggedIn.com. Plugging you into the movies, I'm Cheryl Wilhelmy for Focus on the Family's Plugged In Movie Review.
Your film is in theaters today. Time now for your Friday Faithful, and today I leave you with this message. Don't dim God's light in you to allow others to feel comfortable in darkness. Shine in every arena you enter. With that word, I encourage you to make this a fabulous Friday and carry your light into the weekend and make it just as wonderful. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. And we'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. And you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, on Twitter, as well as Instagram. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. For some of you, the news continues in just a bit. For others, we'll see you right back here on Monday. Goodbye, and God bless.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. The recovery process has begun in Florida in the aftermath of Hurricane Michael and the devastation it left behind. After the monster storm passed through Florida, a video drone took to the sky over Panama City, revealing the The extent of the damage. One example, Mexico Beach, once a pristine and popular destination, now wiped out as if a bomb went off. Michael came ashore 20 miles southeast of Panama City with winds of 155 miles an hour and a storm surge, catastrophic sea waves of 13 feet. By this morning, at least 11 people were dead and entire neighborhoods and beaches disappeared.
So many lives have been changed forever. So many families have lost everything. Homes are gone, businesses are gone.
Downgraded to a tropical storm, Michael moved quickly through Georgia, the Carolinas, Virginia, and then out to sea. Floodwaters surged through the Carolinas, already drenched by Hurricane Florence. Downed trees and gale-force winds knocked power out to at least 900,000 homes and businesses. Michael has finished his journey through the southeast and has headed out to the Atlantic. AccuWeather brings us this look at how powerful Michael's winds were and how much rain it left behind.
Well, on this Friday, Michael is no longer tropical, but still a big wind-producing machine here as it zips its way off toward the north end of the east. It did bring some very gusty winds to portions of the Jersey shoreline, the Delmarva last night, and also some very heavy rain south of our nation's capital, especially from Roanoke to Danville. Some dangerous flooding going on last night and still some river flooding here for today, although from this point going forward, it looks like the heaviest of the rains, eastern tip of Long Island, out toward Newport, Narragansett Bay, and out toward Cape Cod as we go through the midday hours. As we look back, Michael in a short list of the strongest hurricanes in U.S. history, coming in at number 3, again behind Hurricane Camille and the Labor Day hurricane of 1935. Look at some of the rainfall totals again since late Tuesday night. This in North Carolina alone, Sparta near a foot of rain. And at Michael's peak, these were some of the highest wind gusts that again were recorded, right around 125 to 130 miles per hour. All right, going forward through time, talking about the impacts throughout the Northeast, and notice the heavier rain sliding east of Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket here toward the noontime hour, but still some gusty breezes. Again, back behind this precipitation shield, flash flood watch is still up for a bit longer here as we talk about areas south and east of Boston. Now, in the wake of Michael, we are talking about vast improvement throughout the southeast as cleanup continues. Lots of sunshine, not overly hot or humid. Like I said, gusty breezes throughout the shoreline. A lot of these wind advisories go up through the mid-morning hours. So we're still talking about winds of 30 to 40 miles per hour and gusts, a little bit higher here toward the immediate shoreline, and also, again, some high surf type criteria toward the shoreline as well. We're talking about clearing back behind.
Coming up, from ride shares to autonomous vehicles, the future of car ownership is here. See how it's transforming our city roads all the way to your driveway. The story's coming up next. Millennials are migrating to urban areas, and many find it not so practical to drive. That's led to new methods of transportation springing up all over the country. Caitlin Burke reports technology is upending what it means today to own a car.
If you're in the market for a new car, you may want to get a clunker. Experts say car ownership is changing, and they predict that before long, it will look nothing like it has for the past century.
I think the future car ownership is going to be a mixture of private ownership, but an increasing number of people will opt for car sharing and ride sharing services.
If you're looking for a glimpse into the future, add Arlington, Texas to your list of cities to visit. Here in the entertainment district, you can get a chance to ride in an autonomous vehicle. That means there's nobody driving. However, for now, there is a certified operator on board.
Our two main goals with the program are really testing the technology in a real-world environment, and 2, educating the public about it and raising awareness. So the technology is very new. It still has some limitations.
If riding around with no driver isn't what you're looking for, you can try Arlington's on-demand rideshare program, Via.
It is a smartphone app-based service where you can call up a ride. They will come within a block or 2 of where you're located and drop you off within a block or 2 of where you'd like to go for a very cheap cost of just $3 per person per trip.
It sounds a lot like Uber or Lyft, the leaders in the rideshare market. The difference is cost.
With Uber or Lyft, the cheapest trip that we could find was about $6, and the most expensive was $14. And we could do all of those same trips with Via in the service area for $3 per trip.
Our next interview is within Via's service area, so we decided to test it out. We're sharing this ride in Via with Ermin. Ermin, where are you going?
I'm going to Santa Post Station.
Do you use Via a lot?
Yeah, a lot. I work in Dallas, so I usually use Via in the morning and the evenings to go to work and come back from work.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing our ride with us.
It's a great pleasure.
Another technology company in the rideshare space is Turo.
Turo is a peer-to-peer car sharing marketplace. So we enable car owners who have a car sitting in their driveway to rent it out, and they rent these vehicles to travelers who are looking for a unique experience.
Why let a stranger drive your car? Because it could ultimately help you pay for it.
Well, I may never be able to afford a car like this Tesla, which typically sells for about $107,000. If I buy one and then rent it out when I don't need it, I could theoretically cover the cost of owning it.
Pierre Arnold and his wife started using Turo to rent out their Tesla several years ago.
Initially, we thought it would be fun to just earn a little extra income on the side. And then it turned into a thing where we were making enough money from doing it that it totally pays for both of our cars, even to the point where we bought a second car specifically to put on Turo.
The average owner renting through Turo makes about $500 a month. The Arnolds do so well, they're adding another car to their fleet.
We have a reservation in on a Model 3, so we're going to finalize that very shortly here and then put that up on Turo right away. So our intention with that one is specifically to rent it out.
Even if you aren't looking for luxury, owning a car and getting from here to there costs money.
There are three components into transportation costs. The cost of vehicle ownership, the cost of driving a car, and the cost of public transit.
Shima Hamidi researches transportation affordability and car dependency. She says low-income families pay the most for car ownership, mainly because affordable housing is rarely close to public transportation. Technological advancements could alleviate some of the financial burden on these low-income families by making the need to own a personal vehicle obsolete. Thomas Bamonte is the man charged with steering the Dallas-Fort Worth region of Texas towards the transportation model of the future.
In this phase, it is engaging colleagues and regional partners in just starting to think ahead. What might the future look like when 30%, 50%, 90% of the rides are done via shared mobility?
There's still a lot of uncertainty around how all of the new technology will roll out and its time frame. But Bamonte says the cities who have taken time to prepare will be rewarded. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Arlington, Texas.
Still ahead, a look behind the scenes of two major movies, First Man, which opens today, and about the historic landing on the moon, and Unplanned, the true story of a woman who was an abortion clinic director and then gave it up to become a pro-life activist. We're going to take a look at both of those films when we come back. Director Damien Chazelle and actor Ryan Gosling saw 6 Oscar wins with La La Land, and the two are back together again for First Man, which hit theaters today. It is the riveting story behind the first man mission to the moon. Take a look.
These are extraordinary times, and we face an extraordinary challenge.
It was incredibly dangerous and difficult and came with a whole host of doubts and uncertainties and sacrifices and loss.
The impact of this adventure.
But it happened, and I think it's just an incredibly inspiring story.
Time for a great new American enterprise. Time for this nation to take a clearly leading role in space achievement.
I wanted the whole feel of the film to reflect what, again, it must have felt like to be going on these missions. So when we're inside the spacecraft, we tried to really make you feel the claustrophobia, really put the viewer into a totally immersive sort of experience. We had astronauts on set as we were shooting to kind of make sure we were getting things right. People like Buzz Aldrin and Mike Collins, they wanted us to get this right.
All right, here we go.
There's no grander story to tell than mankind's quest to go to the moon. That grand cosmic adventure was, fueled by things made by hand and piloted by people like Neil.
Neil, if his flight is successful, you'll go down in history. What kind of thoughts do you have about that?
We're planning on the flight being successful.
He was not necessarily the sort of all-American hero from the outset. He was a human being. He was vulnerable. He made mistakes. He had flaws. And yet at the same time, there was obviously something special about Neil. There was something about his drive and about his vision, something you could see in his eyes.
Here we go.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Do you question whether the program's worth the cost in money and in lives?
You're down here and you look up and you don't think about it too much, but space exploration changes your perception.
It's hard to communicate just how dangerous and how extreme these missions really were. He takes it to such an extreme that his life is really in jeopardy. This achievement, made everyone feel as though, what we were capable of. If there was enough of a collective interest to accomplish one thing, we could accomplish impossible things.
In the pursuit of excellence, there's always a cost. And this film is not scared to show that. If we can show people who are up against great odds and manage to do something extraordinary, we love that. And there'll be those of us that get inspired by that and feel like we too want to try to do something great in our own lives.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Abby Johnson spent 8 years working for Planned Parenthood as a clinic director. She helped to facilitate more than 20,000 abortions. Then one day, she walked away from it all and became a pro-life activist. Now they're making a movie about her life. Unplanned brings the story to the big screen, an eye-opening look inside the abortion industry. Charlene Aaron visited the set for this groundbreaking motion picture.
Unplanned takes the audience inside the abortion industry, courtesy of Abby Johnson, once a passionate pro-choice advocate. As clinic director for Planned Parenthood, Johnson says she played a part in some 22,000 abortions. The film depicts her emotional decision to quit after watching an abortion via ultrasound. I interviewed Johnson on the set of the new film.
A movie about your life, how exciting is that?
It's very exciting. It's a little surreal, if I'm honest, to watch someone play out the worst version of yourself in a film. But it's also just a good reminder that God can literally use anything from our past and use it for his glory and use it for his kingdom.
Johnson's past included becoming one of the youngest clinic directors for Planned Parenthood and also a spokesperson for the nation's largest abortion provider. Actress Ashley Bratcher, who appeared in other Christian films such as 90 Minutes in Heaven and War Room, plays Abby in the film.
I only got 4 pages of the script when I auditioned, and I thought, wow, just in this 4 pages, there's this really interesting, amazing, charismatic woman who's having this experience, and it's real, it's gritty, but it's compelling. And I thought, man, I need to know who this woman is, and I want to tell her story. And after I saw Abby's testimony, I was just in a puddle on the floor.
When Bratcher's mother learned of her movie role, she shared a deep secret with her daughter.
She said, I'm going to tell you something that I haven't told you before. And she said to me, I was in the clinic. I had my name called. I went back. I was being examined by a woman who was very pregnant. And I was on the table, and that was when I changed my mind. To hear I was seconds away from just not existing. And then also to know that here I am telling Abby Johnson's story. What? I mean, it is so clear to me and evident that God's hand at work is present on this project.
Meanwhile, faith-based filmmakers Chuck Kunzelman and Carrie Solomon say they're preparing for the likely backlash against a film that highlights the ugly truth inside the abortion industry.
We're taking on a monster. We're taking on a great evil. We're taking on the devil's grinder machine. So when you go up against that
He's going to protect that. We have no naive thought that Planned Parenthood won't fight back.
There's nothing pretty about abortion. Both sides know that. Both sides, if they're honest, will admit that. Both sides are dug in pretty tight as far as whether they think it should be acceptable or not.
Johnson, now a pro-life champion, says the cast and crew know a spiritual battle lies ahead.
We pray every day. We pray against spiritual warfare in our home, in our marriage, with our family, and certainly with various pro-life projects that I'm a part of, and certainly this film.
But Bratcher maintains this project isn't about attacking the other side.
I think this film is about healing, about redemption, about knowing that you've never gone too far, that you can escape the grace of God, that He's so merciful, and that you can absolutely be forgiven.
Unplanned is set to be released next spring. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Coming up, a positive story to end your week about a company that helps military spouses in times of need. We're going to have this story right after this. The weekend is here, and we want to leave you with an uplifting story about a handbag company helping military spouses during their time of need. Talia Wise brings us this week's good news story.
Long deployments aren't just tough on the people overseas, they're hard on the families left at home. Military spouses often have to be mom, dad, the chauffeur, and the handyman. That's why one company decided to create a support network.
This is our Riveter, a handbag manufacturing company that crafts their materials from upcycled military parachutes, coats, and uniforms. But they have a bigger mission. Co-founders Lisa Bradley and Cameron Cruz say they wanted to serve military spouses who are often left without support once their partners leave home.
Military spouses, they're kind of pulling double and triple duty at sometimes. We always say that. You've got, a lot of times you're the primary caretaker of your kids or the household when your husband or wife is off or deployed or on training missions.
Think about military spouses and what they're doing at home. They're the ones that, although they're not wearing the uniform, they're still serving their country in a unique way.
These two military wives came up with the idea to create a flexible network where men and women could not only provide for their families, but find a sense of community wherever the military takes them.
I think the military spouses are so important to support because they're the ones that are behind our service members that are doing so much, and sometimes they really are unsung heroes. They are at home worrying about their spouse. They do so much for our country that we don't really realize.
It's a growing community that's finding a reason to smile despite the hardships, sacrifices, and challenges they face. That's CBN Good News. I'm Talia Wise. Until next time, make time to spread a little bit of good news.
All right, now it is time for your Friday Faithful, and today I leave you with this message. Don't dim God's light in you to allow others to feel comfortable in darkness. Shine in every arena you enter. With that word, I encourage you to make this a fabulous Friday and carry your light into the weekend and make it just as wonderful. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about always at cbnnews.com. And we'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make it a fabulous Friday and a wonderful weekend. We'll see you right back here, same time Monday. Goodbye. God bless.